Hello. So we're trying out a new angle today. I figured the natural light would be best. Trying to hide from you all the mess that is the rest of my room. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I already kind of touched on it in my French video. Obviously French is not my native language, so I didn't get to express the full scope of emotion that came with experiencing this story, having this experience with this person. Anyways, I want to talk about my Irish friend Reese. He was the first person I ever met at Sciences Po. My very first class happened to be, well, all of the classes I took were in person, but the very first week, it just so happened that my professor of that class had COVID, so we had the class online, just that first week though. And I was lost. I was lost in that class. It was about historians. At one point in the class, he's like, okay, everybody write 2 historians and we're gonna talk about them. And so me and my separate tab, I said, okay, French historians, go. Not French, but I think I picked Noam Chomsky. I'm not sure if he's considered a historian. Whatever. So throughout the class, I sat there, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally in the wrong place right now. I don't understand anything that's going on. You know, I was trying to keep up, trying to take notes, write down all the words I didn't know. I was paying attention to class and there was this one student that spoke up and he prefaced by saying, oh, you know, like I'm not a speaker of French, but could you clarify this and that? And I'm like, not a native speaker of French? Can we be friends? I'm also not a native speaker of French. So throughout the class, you know, he put us into breakout groups and I got to chat with some of the people, but in the entire class, I would later learn that it's just he and I who are not French kids. Yeah, that's a lot. As class was starting to wrap up, I kind of gathered the courage and I sent him a little message over Zoom. I'm like, hi, I heard that you're an international student. I'm also an international student. My name's Elena. I'm from the US. I go to school in Chicago most terms. Where are you from? And like I could watch Reese's eyes as he noticed the message on the screen, and I could see him gear up with his little fingers to answer me. But before he could answer me, the Zoom call ended, and I was just sitting there like, well, fuck. After the screen went blank, I was just sitting there, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel so very alone. I don't know if I want him to remember me next class or I want him to just totally forget, because, like, whatever. So I went in the next class, which was in person, and I was among the first to arrive because, you know, I hadn't been on campus. And the campus was quite confusing, to be honest with you. I thought I would arrive early, and I was like the first one there, and I strategically sat myself on, you know, the right side of the room next to the windows very inconspicuously. People started to file in, and I remember, I mean, we were all wearing masks, so it's hard to recognize people, but I remember thinking, oh, that one looks like Reese, and that one came right up to me and said, oh, are you the American that sent me a message on Zoom last time? And I'm like, yes, that was me. Please feel free to have a seat if you would like to sit near me. And then we started chatting and class started and like we'd share notes. The following class we had to choose partners for a long-term project, and he, without even consulting me, which is just fine, he said, yes, we're gonna be together in a group. And I have other stories about that group because there was another person in there that was like, and she was a French student and she pawned off all of her work onto us. I have a lot of feelings about it. No worries. But anyways, so after that class, he asked if I was hungry and I said yes. We chatted a lot. We talked about school, we talked about language, we talked about everything, and we were besties after that. He proceeded to introduce me to his friends. He invited me to a St. Patrick's Day party in Paris with all of his Irish friends, which was so cute. And he was probably one of my closest friends that I had at Sciences Po. And that's just a reminder to like go meet people, you know what I mean? Like if you feel like you're being desperate, Stop. You probably are, and that's okay, but people find it endearing. So the next story I want to tell you is about this lady named Monique, which I met with my friend Raquel. Raquel and I had planned to, have some drinks, kind of feeling the vibe. And it was probably like a Wednesday night. It was in the middle of the week. So I met up with her. We were supposed to go eat or something at like 8 p.m. I suggested this place in the 5th arrondissement, which I had walked past and seen the menu, and it was so cheap. It was like 3 courses for 12 euros, which is insane. And we decided to go there. And anyways, we got there. It smelled great. We had the table, which was crammed next to all the other tables, and we were handed our menus, and Raquel and I both obviously speak, well, I speak French. Raquel speaks much better French. So the lady at the table next to us looked over to us. I guess she had heard us speak in English, and she said, "Do you need help translating the menus?" And we were both like, "Oh, that's so sweet," but actually we got it. It's no big deal. By the time we got all of our food, we were in full conversation mode with this random lady that we'd never met before. Her name was Monique, and she was like a art professor, like slash curator slash whatever. It was insane. And her accent was really difficult to place. She was from the Loire Valley, but she spent a lot of time in England. So she had this kind of like amorphous kind of, I don't know, it was really interesting. And she was very interested in like Eastern philosophies and laws that protected artists, which is interesting because my friend Raquel is going into law for that exact thing. So they had a lot to talk about, and I could only interject every once in a while, but that's fine. We talked about art and literature and history and just personal interests. It was so fascinating that we all got lost in the conversation, not realizing that she had already finished her dessert before we even got halfway through our entree. And we must have sat there in that restaurant for 3 hours or so. Eventually she came to our table to let her table get turned over to the next set of hungry customers. It must have been like close to 11 p.m. on this like Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it was. She turned to us and she said, what are you girls doing on Saturday? We said, not much. And she asked us if we wanted to go to the Pompidou with her, which is a museum. She was telling us how one of her students' fathers had an exhibit at the Pompidou this weekend, that coming weekend, and she asked us if we wanted to go along with her, and of course we said yes. We went to the Pompidou with her, and it was an exhibit on George Baselitz, which apparently I'd never heard of him, but apparently a very famous artist across Europe, which was kind of cool. And she gave us a tour that was far better than anything I could have paid for. Told us about the colors, about the brush strokes, about all this, about George's experience during World War II and how that influenced his art and his style and all this other stuff, and it was so incredible. After that, we went to Passage Brady for some Indian Pakistani food, which was incredible. And then she said, well, if you wouldn't mind taking one more stop with me, then I can introduce you to an artist that I know very well. And so she took us to this studio, which was not too far. We met an artist named Quibj. I'll put the link in the description. And he introduced himself very amicably, and I said, I'm Elena, I'm a student, blah, 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 blah. And he looked at me, he's like, did you buy those earrings from us? And I was wearing these earrings. He's like, did you get those from us? And I'm like, no, they were a gift, which they weren't. I bought them off of Shine years and years and years ago before I knew that that was not a good thing to do. To which he scrolled through his phone and he pulled up this print of something he had created. So these earrings just so happened to be a ripped off copy of this artist's print. I was so embarrassed. It was because like, what do? Do you keep wearing them? Do you throw them out? I love these things, and now they have a story, so like I keep wearing them. I think of him every time, so in a way I guess it's like whatever. But yeah, anyways, Raquel, who deals with privacy laws, copyright laws, and specifically with art, she had a long conversation with him, and it was so embarrassing for me, but that's okay. Final story I will talk about, because this video is getting very long, although I'll give it a part 2 if you're curious. I had a psychology class that I took while I was there. It was psychoanalysis and politics, basically, and it was in French. And that was a very tricky class as a non-native French speaker. Lots of technical jargon, lots of, like, he was talking about stories. He spoke very softly. This French professor was this tall, thin, like, what you would expect from a French psychotherapist, basically. He wore dark turtlenecks every time. He sat back on his chair like, as he pondered what you were saying and deemed it worthy or not, and he was kind of scary but also hilarious. Anyways, I sat in like maybe the 3rd or 4th row. In front of me, there was this one guy. I watched him throughout the classes as he frantically Google translated some of the things that our professor was saying, and I felt so bad for him because I could tell that he just wasn't having it. And I don't know what took us so long, but eventually, like, it had to have been the second to last or so class of the semester, and I made a joke to him. I'm like, oh, you keeping up over there? And he smiled because he spoke English, of course. We started chatting, and, you know, some of the other people from the class, and actually that class had quite a few more exchange students because there was an English guy, there was a Welsh guy, I think, and we all, you know, were chatting or whatever. We were migrating over to the cafeteria, and we sat there for a long time, just chatting, laughing, talking about our interests, you know, all that kind of stuff. And eventually one of them wanted to go see a football match, soccer for us American folk. Me personally, I can't be bothered with football, soccer, so I decided to meet up with him after the game ended, and we marched over to the Briand Pigalle because it was the closest. We went to this restaurant, and again, we sat there for ages. It was incredible. Okay, this is a little pretentious, but since we were all in a psychology course, we talked a lot about Freud, we talked a lot about the people that we were reading about, Simone de Beauvoir. Well, anyways, after we'd sat at the restaurant for a number of hours, we didn't want to end the night there. So Ari, oh my gosh, I never told you his name. The kid who sat in front of me, who was Google translating everything, his name was Ari. He ushered us into his 9 square meter Airbnb, which he'd been living at this whole time. We just wandered drunk through the streets, and it had to have been like close to midnight, and we went to this little bodega, I guess, Spiriti, I don't know, like a little thing, like a convenience store. We got some beers, we got some alcohol, it was really nice. Continued chatting, and he told me this story of he had done El Camino in Spain when he was like 17, and he was telling me about, he was hiking across, you know, the way with this big walking stick, and he couldn't help but feel like he was in the Lord of the Rings because, you know, like, none shall pass, he had a big stick, whatever. And he felt this so super strong urge to read Lord of the Rings because of it, that, you know, in the next town they stopped off in, he looked at the bookstore, he found it, but it was in Spanish, he didn't speak Spanish. So what he did instead, he printed off the entirety of the Lord of the Rings first book, which, clever on his part, but I guess when you're hiking the El Camino, you're trying to carry as little weight on you as you possibly can manage. So he had this huge stack of papers, and every time he'd read one, he'd crumple it up and throw it away. The joke was, in like 100 years, couple hundred years, even 1,000 years in the future, when society has imploded, somebody is going to rediscover the Lord of the Rings and think it's some, like, biblical text, all because of a little 17-year-old who felt like he was Gandalf for a moment in Spain. And I think that's hilarious. This video has gone on far too long. I am thinking about doing a part 2 because I have a number of stories that I didn't even get to in this video. I have more stories about Ari and about the friends that he introduced me to. I would love to share that with you. As always, I hope you're doing super well and that you have a wonderful day. Love you. Bye.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.